Jake Morrison stood in the center of the massive chamber and tried not to let his hands shake. The Galactic Council's meeting hall stretched higher than any building on Earth, its crystal walls glowing with soft blue light that hurt his eyes. 12 giant thrones formed a circle around him, each one holding an alien being that looked down at him like he was some kind of bug they had found on their shoe. Commander Lisa Hayes stood to his right, her military uniform crisp and perfect, despite the long journey from Earth. Dr. Alex Turner was on his left, clutching a datapad that held humanity's greatest achievements and discoveries. All three humans looked very small in this place that was built to make visitors feel tiny and unimportant. Chancellor Zektar of the Vorthak hegemony leaned forward on his throne. His gray skin was covered in sharp ridges, and his forearms moved, like deadly snakes as he gestured. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder rolling across mountains. "So these are the humans who think they belong among the stars," he said, and Jake could hear the mockery in every word. The crystalline Empress Velnara sat perfectly still, her body made of what looked like living diamond that caught and split the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. Her voice sounded like wind chimes when she spoke. "We have reviewed your species' application for membership in our council," she said. "The results are most interesting." Jake had practiced his speech 1,000 times during the long trip from Earth, but now all those words seemed to stick in his throat. He cleared his throat and stepped forward. "Your honors, humanity comes before you not as beggars asking for charity, but as partners ready to contribute to the greater galactic community." A sound that might have been laughter came from Council Member Thisara, whose snake-like body coiled around her floating throne. Her scales shifted from green to dark red as she spoke. "Partners," she hissed, "your species has existed for barely 10,000 years of what you call civilization. We have watched entire star systems be born and die while your kind was still learning to make fire." Dr. Turner stepped forward and activated his datapad. Holographic images filled the air above them, showing Earth's great cities, the first Mars colonies, humanity's art and music and literature. "We may be young," he said, his voice steady despite the fear Jake could see in his eyes, "but we have accomplished much in our short time. We have turned a single world into a garden, reached for other planets, and created beauty that moves the heart." The images showed human paintings and sculptures, recordings of symphonies and operas, great buildings that reached toward the sky like prayers made of stone and metal. They showed the cure for cancer, the first fusion reactors, the development of faster-than-light travel that had brought them to this place. Council Member Morthek, whose body looked like it was made of living stone, rumbled deep in his chest. "Impressive for children, perhaps," he said. "But what can you offer beings who have mastered the secrets of time and space? What wisdom can creatures who live barely a century share with those who have existed for millions of years?" Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry would only prove their point about human emotions being a weakness. "We offer a fresh perspective," he said. "We see problems with new eyes and find solutions that others might miss. We adapt quickly to new situations and we never give up when things get difficult." "Adapt?" Zektar's forearms spread wide in what might have been amusement. "You mean you stumble around trying random things until something works by accident? That is not adaptation, human, that is chaos." Commander Hayes stepped forward, her military training helping her keep her voice calm and professional. "With respect, Chancellor, humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters that would have destroyed other species. We have turned every setback into a chance to grow stronger. That is not chaos. That is determination." The Empress Velnara tilted her head, the crystals of her body chiming softly. "Determination is admirable in the young," she said, "but the galaxy is vast and full of dangers you cannot imagine. Ancient powers sleep between the stars, waiting for the wrong move to wake them. Civilizations that thought themselves mighty have vanished without a trace, leaving only empty worlds behind. Which is exactly why you need us," Jake said, and this time he let some of his passion show in his voice. "You've grown comfortable and safe in your ancient wisdom. You've stopped taking risks, stopped exploring, stopped dreaming of what might be possible. Humanity still dreams. We still reach for things that seem impossible. The chamber fell silent for a long moment. Jake could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears and the soft hum of the building systems. Finally, Council Member Thisara spoke again. "Dreams are for the young and foolish," she said. "The galaxy is not a playground where children can run about breaking things." "Your technology is primitive," added Morthek. "Your ships are slow and clumsy compared to ours. Your weapons are crude. Your understanding of physics is still in its infancy." Dr. Turner activated another section of his presentation, showing humanity's latest scientific discoveries and technological achievements. "We may not have your advanced technology yet," he said, "but we're learning fast. Give us a chance to prove ourselves and you'll be amazed at what we can accomplish." Zektar made a gesture with two of his arms that Jake somehow knew was dismissive. "Learning fast is not the same as knowing deeply," the Chancellor said. "You rush toward every new discovery like children chasing after bright toys, never stopping to consider the consequences of what you do. The Council has existed for over 2 million years, Velnara said, her crystal body flashing brighter. In that time, we have seen countless young species make the same mistakes, over and over again. They reach too far too fast and destroy themselves or threaten others. We will not allow such chaos to spread to the civilized galaxy." Jake felt his hope starting to crumble, but he made one last desperate attempt. "Then teach us," he said. "Guide us. Help us become the kind of species you want us to be. Isn't that what the Council is for? To help younger species grow and learn?" The silence that followed lasted forever. Finally, Thaisara spoke for all of them. "The vote is unanimous," she said. "Humanity is denied membership in the Galactic Council. Furthermore, we cordially request that your species restrict all activities to your home system until such time as you achieve true civilization. We estimate this will require perhaps another 10,000 of your years, assuming you do not destroy yourselves first." Jake felt the words hit him like a physical blow. All of humanity's hopes and dreams, all the work that had gone into reaching this moment, crushed in a single sentence. But even as despair filled his heart, he straightened his shoulders and looked up at the 12 beings who had just dismissed his entire species. "Very well," he said, his voice somehow steady. "We thank the Council for their time and consideration. Humanity will comply with your request." He paused, and something in his eyes made several of the Council members lean forward slightly. "We wish you well in your ancient wisdom and comfortable safety." The humans were given 48 hours to evacuate all human presence from Council space. As they walked out of that vast chamber, Jake Morrison was already thinking about what came next. The message arrived on Earth like a thunderbolt from the sky. President Karen Walsh stood in the emergency meeting room deep beneath the White House, watching the faces of the world's leaders on the wall-mounted screens as Jake Morrison's report played for the third time. The room was silent except for the quiet hum of air conditioning and the occasional cough from one of the dozen people gathered around the long table. General Pete Rodriguez slammed his fist down on the table, hard enough to make the water glasses jump. 48 hours, he said, his voice thick with anger. They give us 48 hours to pack up everything we've built out there and come crawling home like beaten dogs. Admiral Nancy Chen sat across from him, her fingers drumming against the table's surface. "The evacuation is already underway," she said. "I've sent recall orders to every ship, station, and outpost in Council space. Our people are professionals and they'll follow orders, but morale is going to take a beating." Dr. Ben Parker adjusted his thick glasses and leaned forward. "Perhaps we should look at this differently," he said in his quiet voice. "The Council has just told us that we're free to develop without their interference or oversight. That could be an opportunity rather than a punishment." "Opportunity?" General Rodriguez turned to stare at him. "They've locked us in a box and thrown away the key. How is that an opportunity?" Dr. Rita Coleman, the head of Earth's space science program, cleared her throat. "Ben has a point," she said. "Think about it from a different angle. For the past 50 years, we've been trying to copy Council technology, following their rules, adapting our methods to match their expectations. What if we stopped trying to be what they want us to be and focused on being what we are? President. Walsh raised her hand for silence. Explain that thought, Rita. Coleman stood up and walked to the large display screen at the front of the room. With a few touches, she brought up a star map showing human space and the much larger area controlled by the Council. The Council controls roughly 30% of the galaxy, she said. They've been around for 2 million years and they've spread out slowly and carefully, avoiding anything that looks dangerous or unknown. Look at their territory. See how it forms a rough sphere around the galactic center, never going too close to the really active star-forming regions or the areas where we've detected unusual energy signatures. The room studied the map. Walsh could see what Coleman meant. Council space was neat and tidy, avoiding the galaxy's wild frontiers. You're saying they've gotten cautious in their old age? I'm saying they've forgotten how to take risks, Coleman replied. But we haven't. We're still young enough to be stupid and brave enough to try things that might fail. The galaxy is huge, people. There's so much space out there that the Council has never even explored. Admiral Chen leaned back in her chair. So instead of trying to join their club, we start our own? Exactly. Coleman's eyes lit up with excitement. We take everything we've learned from our brief contact with Council technology, and we build on it. We don't copy their methods. We develop our own. We go to the places they're afraid to go, and we meet the species they've never bothered to contact. General Rodriguez still looked skeptical. And when they decide we're getting too big for our britches? What happens when they show up with their advanced weapons and tell us to get back in our box? Then we'll deal with that problem when it comes, Walsh said. Right now I want to hear more about this expansion idea. Rita, what would it look like in practical terms? Coleman touched the display again and the map zoomed out to show the entire galaxy. We have 312 ships currently operating in Council space, she said. Everything from small research vessels to our biggest colony ships. Instead of bringing them all home, we redirect them to unexplored regions. We use them as the foundation for a new expansion program. The map lit up with dots of light spreading out from Earth's solar system. But instead of heading toward Council space, they moved in the opposite direction, toward the galaxy's outer rim and the mysterious areas between the major spiral arms. Captain Sam Foster's voice crackled over the communication system as his ship, the Liberty, reported in from the edge of Council space. Command, this is Foster. We've received the recall orders, but we're currently tracking some very interesting energy readings from a system about 200 light-years outside Council territory. Request permission to investigate before heading home. Walsh looked around the room and saw nods from most of the people present. Permission granted, Captain Foster, but be careful out there. Copy that command, Foster out. Dr. Parker pulled up another display showing Earth's current industrial capacity. If we're going to do this, we need to think big, he said. The Council rejected us partly because our technology seems primitive to them. They're not wrong about that, but they made the mistake of assuming we'd stay primitive. What are you thinking, Ben? Walsh asked. I'm thinking we stop trying to reverse engineer Council technology and start developing our own from scratch. We take the basic principles we've learned and we apply human ingenuity to them. We think outside their box entirely. Coleman nodded, enthusiastically. The Council species all seem to specialize, she said. The Vorthak focus on military technology, the crystallines work with energy systems, the stone people do construction. But humans? We're generalists. We adapt. We take ideas from one field and apply them to another in ways that would never occur to a specialist. Over the next 6 hours, the emergency session turned into something else entirely. Instead of planning humanity's retreat, they found themselves designing humanity's future. The recall orders were modified. Instead of coming home, human ships were directed to rendezvous points beyond Council space where they would receive new orders and new missions. Captain Maria Santos, commanding the research vessel Endeavour, was the first to reach her assigned rendezvous point in a previously unexplored system. Her excited report came in just as the meeting was winding down. Command, you're not going to believe this. We've found a system with 7 planets and 2 of them are in the habitable zone. But that's not the interesting part. There are ruins here, massive structures orbiting the fourth planet. They're clearly artificial, but they don't match any known council architecture. The room fell silent. Walsh leaned forward toward the communication panel. Are you saying we've found evidence of another spacefaring civilization? That's exactly what I'm saying, ma'am. And judging by the decay patterns, these ruins are old. Really old. Maybe older than the council itself. Admiral Chen stood up, her eyes bright with excitement. Mr. President, I request permission to redirect additional ships to Captain Santos's location. If we've stumbled onto something like this in our first day of exploration, imagine what else we might find. Walsh looked around the room one more time. Every face showed the same expression of determination and hope that she felt growing in her own chest. Permission granted, Admiral. And I want you to expand the search grid. Let's see what else is out there waiting for us. Dr. Coleman moved to the star map one final time and gestured at the vast, unexplored regions beyond council space. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, the council just gave us the greatest gift they could have given us. They set us free. As the meeting broke up and people began making preparations for humanity's great leap into the unknown, Walsh remained behind, staring at the star map. Somewhere out there in that vast darkness were wonders and dangers that the council had never imagined. Species that had never heard of the great Galactic Council and their ancient rules. Technologies that had developed along completely different paths. Worlds that had never known the touch of any sapient being. The council had meant to humble humanity by sending them back to their little corner of space. Instead, they had pointed them toward infinity. And if there was one thing Walsh knew about her species, it was that humans had never been able to resist the call of the infinite. The evacuation from council space continued as ordered, but now, it felt less like a retreat and more like the beginning of the greatest adventure in human history. 48 hours had seemed like so little time when they thought it meant the end of their dreams. Now it felt like barely enough time to begin, preparing for everything that was about to unfold. 50 years had passed since the council's rejection, and Captain Tony Blake stood on the bridge of his colony ship, the New Horizon, looking out at something that would have made those ancient aliens choke on their own pride. The Kepler sector stretched before him, 800 light-years from the nearest council world, and it was alive with human activity in ways that defied everything the council thought they knew about how civilizations should develop. Captain, called out Lieutenant Jenny Adams from her position at the navigation console, we're receiving docking requests from 17 different vessels. The orbital traffic control system is asking us to take position 43 in the approach queue. Tony smiled as he looked at the main display showing the controlled chaos of New Terra's orbital space. Massive cargo haulers moved between the planet's 3 orbital shipyards, while smaller vessels darted between them like busy insects. Construction platforms worked on projects that stretched for kilometers, building structures that combined human engineering with design principles, learned from a dozen different alien species the council had never even met. Take us in, Lieutenant. I want to see what Governor Martinez has accomplished since our last visit. The New Horizon descended through New Terra's atmosphere, passing through layers of specialized habitats that had been constructed at different altitudes. High above the surface, floating cities rode the jet streams, their transparent domes filled with gardens and residential areas for humans who preferred the freedom of the open sky. Below them, the planet's surface showed the careful hand of terraforming technology that had turned a barren rock into a world where multiple species could live together in comfort. Susan Martinez met Tony at the spaceport, her hair now gray, but her eyes still bright with the enthusiasm that had driven her to become the first civilian governor of a human colony world. She wore clothing that mixed human fabrics with materials developed by their new alien partners, practical garments that could adapt to different atmospheric conditions and temperatures. Tony Blake, she said, grabbing his hands in greeting. You picked a good time to visit. We just finished the Deep Ocean project and the results are beyond anything we hoped for. They took a transport vehicle through the colonial capital, a city that looked like nothing Earth had ever produced. The buildings grew rather than being built, using living materials that the humans had learned to cultivate from the plant-like aliens called the Verdani. Streets curved and flowed like rivers, designed to work with the natural patterns of the planet's weather rather than fighting against them. "Tell me about the Ocean Project," Tony said as they rode through neighborhoods where human children played, alongside young Verdani and the small furry creatures called the Small Folk, who had been the first species to accept humanity's offer of friendship. Susan's face lit up with pride. "You know how the council species always build their habitats above ground or in space? They never really explored what could be accomplished underwater. Well, we partnered with the deep swimmers and created something amazing. The transport brought them to the edge of a vast body of water that stretched to the horizon. Beneath the surface, Tony could see the lights of an underwater city that extended far below, its towers and domes arranged in patterns that followed the ocean's natural currents. Ships that moved like fish swam between the structures, carrying people and cargo through the liquid environment. The deep swimmers taught us how to build with the water instead of in spite of it," Susan explained. "Every structure down there produces its own oxygen and processes waste into useful materials. The city actually improves the ocean's health rather than polluting it." "And the population? We've got over 2 million people living down there now. Humans and aliens working together on projects the Council never dreamed of. They descended in a submarine vessel that moved through the water with organic grace, inside the underwater city." Tony saw gardens where earth plants grew alongside alien species, creating ecosystems that had never existed anywhere else in the galaxy. Research laboratories worked on projects that combined human curiosity with alien knowledge, developing new technologies that solved problems in ways that surprised everyone involved. Dr. Frank Hudson, the city's head of research, met them at the Central Laboratory Complex. His team had just completed work on a communication system that could transmit messages across the galaxy instantly, using principles that combined human understanding of quantum physics with insights learned from the energy-based life forms called the Sparklings. "The Council's quantum link networks are impressive," Frank explained as he showed them the new system. "But they're based on the assumption that information has to travel through normal space-time. The Sparklings exist partially outside normal space, so they experience time and distance differently. When we applied their perspective to our quantum theories, we discovered we could create communication channels that bypass space-time entirely." Tony watched the demonstration with amazement. Messages sent from New Terra reached colony worlds hundreds of light years away in mere seconds, with perfect clarity and no signal degradation. "How long before this technology is available to all our colonies?" "We're already installing the equipment," Frank replied. "Within 6 months, every human settlement will be connected by instant communication. We'll be able to coordinate activities across our entire expansion zone as if we were all in the same solar system." Their tour continued to the planet's northern continent, where Major Kate Wilson was overseeing a terraforming project that was turning a lifeless desert into fertile farmland. But this was not the crude terraforming that human engineers had imagined back on Earth. Working with the crystalline beings called the Shapers, Kate's team had learned to transform entire continents by working with the planet's natural systems, rather than overwhelming them. "We start by introducing the right microorganisms to the soil," Kate explained as they stood on an observation platform, looking out over thousands of square kilometers of green fields, where desert had existed just 5 years before. "The Shapers taught us that every world has its own unique chemistry, and if you understand that chemistry, you can guide its development instead of forcing change upon it." The fields below them grew crops that had been developed specifically for this world's conditions, plants that combined Earth genetics with adaptations learned from studying how alien species had evolved to thrive in similar environments. The yields were higher than anything achieved on Earth, and the crops required no artificial fertilizers or pesticides because they had been designed to work in harmony with the planet's native ecosystem. As they traveled back to the capital city, Susan showed Tony recordings from other human colonies that demonstrated the incredible diversity of what humanity had accomplished in just 50 years. On the ice world of Glacier Prime, humans had built underground cities that used geothermal energy to create tropical environments in chambers carved from solid ice. The mining world of Rockfall had developed techniques for extracting metals and rare elements without damaging planetary environments. methods that were so effective that even the rock-based species called the Stonekin had asked to learn them. But perhaps most impressive were the collaborative projects with alien species that the Council had either never encountered or had dismissed as too primitive for consideration. The insectoid hive builders had joined with human engineers to create construction techniques that could build massive structures in days rather than years. The gaseous beings called the Cloudwalkers had taught human pilots how to navigate in three-dimensional space using principles that made human spacecraft incredibly agile and efficient. "The best part," Susan said as they sat in her office overlooking the bustling colonial capital, "is that we're just getting started. Every month brings new discoveries, new partnerships, new possibilities. The Council thought 50 years was barely enough time for a species to learn basic space travel. In 50 years, we've created something they never imagined in 2 million years." Tony looked out at the city below, where humans and aliens worked together on projects that would have been impossible for any single species to accomplish. Children of multiple species played together in parks designed to accommodate different environmental needs. Scientists from dozens of worlds collaborated on research that pushed the boundaries of what anyone thought was possible. "How many colonies do we have now?" he asked. 312 worlds across 57 star systems," Susan replied. "And that's not counting the mobile habitats, the research stations, or the joint settlements we've established with our new allies. We estimate that human space now covers roughly the same volume as the Council's territory, but we've accomplished it in 50 years instead of 2 million. Tony shook his head in wonder. "What do you think the Council would say if they could see this?" Susan's smile was sharp and satisfied. "I think they would realize they made the biggest mistake in galactic history when they told us to go away and grow up. We did exactly what they asked us to do. We just did it faster and better than they thought was possible." As the New Horizon prepared to leave New Terra and continue on to other human colonies, Tony received a priority message from Earth. President Coleman, Junior Analyst Mordoon of the Vorthak hegemony, stared at his detection screens with growing confusion. The readings made no sense according to everything he had been taught about how the galaxy worked. Strange energy signatures were appearing near the Outer Rim territories, patterns that did not match any known technology in the Council databases. He filed his first report as routine sensor glitches, the kind of false readings that sometimes occurred when monitoring equipment operated at the extreme edges of its range. Council member Thisara dismissed his findings without even reading the full analysis. After all, nothing interesting had ever come from those empty sectors beyond Council space. They were wastelands unsuitable for civilized beings. But the reports kept coming. Survey ships detected unusual hyperspace distortions in areas that should have been completely empty. Deep space monitoring stations recorded brief flashes of artificial energy that appeared and vanished too quickly to properly analyze. Most disturbing of all, several border patrols reported sighting unidentified vessels that appeared to be using faster-than-light technology, but with engine signatures unlike anything in Council records. The first real shock came when the crystalline trading convoy Bright Harmony encountered a strange vessel while conducting routine business near the edge of Council territory. Captain Zelnoth had been expecting to meet with primitive traders from one of the barely civilized worlds that sometimes tried to sell raw materials to Council merchants. Instead, he found himself facing the human merchant ship Prosperity, commanded by Captain Greg Thompson, and nothing about the encounter went according to his expectations. The human vessel was beautiful in ways that made no sense to Zelnoth's understanding of proper starship design. Its hull seemed to flow like liquid metal, constantly adjusting its shape for optimal efficiency. When micrometeorites struck its surface during their conversation, he watched in amazement as the hull material flowed to repair the tiny impacts, instantly leaving no trace of damage. "This is Captain Thompson of the Prosperity," came the transmission, and Zelnoth was surprised to hear the human speaking perfect galactic standard with no trace of the accent that primitive species usually displayed. "We're on a peaceful trading mission. How can we assist you today?" Zelnoth had dealt with hundreds of lesser species over his long career. They all followed the same pattern when encountering Council vessels. First came fear and awe at meeting, representatives of the great galactic civilization. Then came desperate attempts to prove their worthiness through excessive deference and pathetic offerings of whatever crude goods they had managed to produce. But Captain Thompson showed no fear, no awe, and certainly no deference. He spoke to Zelnoth as an equal, with the casual confidence of someone who had every right to be traveling freely through space conducting his own business. When Zelnoth announced his intention to conduct an inspection of the human vessel, as was standard procedure with unknown ships, Thompson's response left him speechless. "I appreciate the offer, Captain Zelnoth, but we'll have to decline. Our cargo manifest is available if you'd like to review it, and we're happy to provide proof of registration and legitimate trading permits. However, our vessel contains proprietary technology and confidential trade information that we cannot allow foreign inspection of without proper diplomatic authorization." No one had ever refused a council inspection. No one had ever suggested that council representatives needed authorization from anyone to examine whatever they chose to examine. The concept was so foreign to Zelnoth's experience that he initially thought he had misunderstood the human's words. "You are refusing to submit to council authority?" he asked, certain that the human would immediately apologize for the misunderstanding and comply with proper procedures. "We respect council authority within council space," Thompson replied politely, but firmly. "However, according to our navigation records, we are currently in unclaimed territory beyond council borders. As representatives of the Free Traders Alliance, we operate under our own regulations in neutral space." The Free Traders Alliance. Zelnoth had never heard of such an organization, but something about the human's calm confidence suggested this was not some made-up excuse. Thompson spoke like someone backed by real authority, real power, real alternatives to council approval. The encounter ended with the human vessel departing peacefully, leaving Zelnoth to file a very disturbing report. The humans he remembered from 50 years ago had been primitive creatures barely capable of crude space travel. The being he had just spoken with represented a civilization that clearly considered itself equal to the council in every way that mattered. More reports followed. Council deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures coming from the direction of former human space. The reading suggested construction projects on a scale that rivaled the greatest achievements of council engineering, but using power sources that produced energy signatures unlike anything in their databases. The breakthrough moment came when long-range sensors detected the activation of what could only be described as an artificial star. Dr. Rachel Stone's team on Luna Station had successfully tested humanity's first controlled stellar engineering project, a fusion reactor the size of a small moon that could power entire sectors of space. The energy output was staggering, visible to council sensors from hundreds of light years away. More disturbing was the sophistication required for such a project. Creating artificial stars was considered theoretical, even by council standards, a technology that might be achievable in another million years of careful research and development. Chancellor Zektar convened an emergency session of the full council when the sensor reports reached his attention. The 12 great beings who ruled galactic civilization gathered in their crystal chamber, but this time they were not looking down at primitive supplicants. This time they were looking up at displays showing energy readings and technological achievements that surpassed their own capabilities. "This cannot be accurate," insisted Council Member Thysera, her scales shifting through the colors that indicated deep distress. "The humans were barely above Stone Age technology when we last evaluated them. No species develops this rapidly." Empress Velnara's crystalline body pulsed with worried light patterns. "The readings have been verified by multiple sensor networks," she said, her wind chime voice carrying undertones of concern. "Whatever the humans have become, they are no longer the primitive creatures we dismissed 50 years ago." More reports arrived hourly. Council intelligence networks had finally focused their attention on human space, and the results were shocking. Humanity had not simply developed advanced technology. They had apparently convinced dozens of other species to work with them, creating some kind of alliance that was expanding through previously unexplored regions of the galaxy at unprecedented speed. The recordings from Captain Zelnoth's encounter were analyzed by council experts who reached disturbing conclusions. The human vessel's technology was not simply advanced. It was innovative in ways that suggested fundamentally different approaches to solving engineering problems. Where council technology had developed along predictable paths over millions of years, human technology seemed to leap from one breakthrough to another without following any logical progression. They appear to be collaborating with species we have never encountered, reported Chief Analyst Thekmore. Our xenobiological databases contain no reference to at least 17 different technological signatures detected in what we now must refer to as human space. They have apparently made contact with civilizations that we were completely unaware. However, the final straw came when border monitoring stations detected a massive fleet of human vessels conducting what appeared to be a joint military exercise with unknown aliens near the edge of Council space. The ships moved with precision and coordination that demonstrated advanced tactical thinking, using formation techniques that no Council military strategist had ever imagined. Chancellor Zektar stood before the great display showing the growing extent of human expansion and felt something he had not experienced in thousands of years: uncertainty. The galaxy that had been stable and predictable for so long was changing in ways that challenged everything the Council thought they knew about how civilizations should develop. Perhaps, suggested Empress Velnara carefully, her voice carrying harmonics of diplomatic necessity, we should extend another invitation to the humans, as equals this time, with full membership rights and voting privileges. The silence that followed lasted for several minutes as the 12 most powerful beings in known space contemplated the unprecedented step of admitting they had made a mistake. Finally, Thesara spoke the words that none of them wanted to say, out loud. "Draft the invitation," she said, her scales now showing the dull gray colors of reluctant acceptance, "and make it clear that we are prepared to offer them everything they originally requested, plus additional concessions if necessary." The message was sent immediately, transmitted to Earth through the Council's most secure diplomatic channels. It was addressed to Ambassador Jake Morrison, if he was still alive, or to whoever now spoke for humanity in galactic affairs. Ambassador Jake Morrison, now 78 years old but still sharp as the day he had stood before the Council half a century ago, received the message aboard the flagship vessel Enterprise while it was docked at Harmony Station, humanity's greatest achievement in collaborative engineering. Admiral Chris Parker stood beside him as they read the Council's invitation on the bridge's main display, both men wearing expressions that mixed amusement with something harder and less forgiving. "They want to make us equals now," Jake said, his voice carrying the weight of decades spent building something better than what the Council had offered. Full membership rights, voting privileges, and what they call additional concessions if necessary. Admiral Parker looked out through the bridge windows at Harmony Station's central hub, where representatives from 47 different species worked together on projects that pushed the boundaries of what anyone had thought possible. "Too little, too late," he said simply. Jake activated the communication system and sent a response that would be received by the Council in minutes, rather than the weeks their own message had taken to travel. The reply was brief, polite, and devastating in its implications. To the Galactic Council, from Ambassador Jake Morrison representing humanity and our allies in the Free Species Federation, thank you for your gracious invitation to join the Council as full members. After careful consideration, humanity must respectfully decline your offer. The message was broadcast simultaneously across both human space and Council territory, ensuring that every inhabited world in both regions would hear humanity's response at the same time. But Jake was far from finished. He had spent 50 years preparing for this moment, and he intended to make it count. However, his message continued. Humanity would like to extend our own invitation to the Galactic Council and all member species. We invite you to join the Free Species Federation, an alliance built on principles of mutual respect, voluntary cooperation, and shared discovery. Unlike traditional hierarchical structures, the FSF operates as a true partnership where every species contributes, according to their strengths and benefits, according to their needs. What followed was a presentation that showcased everything humanity had accomplished with their new allies. The display showed joint colonies where multiple species lived and worked together, creating environments that were more diverse and productive than anything any single species could have achieved alone. Research facilities demonstrated breakthrough technologies that had emerged from collaborative efforts between human curiosity and alien knowledge. The deep swimmer cities showed architectural principles that worked with natural forces rather than against them. The Verdani agricultural projects demonstrated farming techniques that improved planetary ecosystems while producing unprecedented yields. The Shaper terraforming operations revealed methods for transforming worlds that enhanced rather than destroyed their natural beauty. Most impressive were the exploration missions that human-led alliances had conducted in regions of space that the Council had never dared to investigate. Captain Diana Ross of the exploration vessel Voyager 3 appeared on screen, reporting from the edge of the galactic core where her mixed-species crew had discovered phenomena that revolutionized understanding of stellar evolution and galactic structure. The Council has spent 2 million years building a civilization based on maintaining the status quo. Diana reported from her ship's bridge, where human and alien crew members worked side by side. The Free Species Federation has spent 50 years proving that diversity and innovation are the true keys to progress. Jake's presentation included detailed comparisons between Council achievements and FSF accomplishments. In terms of territorial expansion, the FSF had covered as much space in 50 years as the Council had claimed in their first million. In technological development, human-led collaborations had produced advances that surpassed Council capabilities in multiple fields. Most important, the FSF had made peaceful contact with over 200 species that the Council had never encountered, creating a network of cooperation that spanned previously unexplored regions of the galaxy. The response from Council space was immediate and dramatic. Within hours of Jake's broadcast, formal diplomatic inquiries began arriving from individual Council member species. The Aquatic Depth Collective, which had always struggled with the Council's atmospheric bias toward air-breathing species, sent a delegation to the nearest FSF territory to discuss membership possibilities. The young flame dancers, who had been considered too primitive for full Council membership despite 50,000 years of civilization, found kindred spirits in humanity's rapid development and sent representatives to explore partnership opportunities. Even some of the older Council species began quietly investigating what the FSF had to offer, compared to the rigid hierarchies they had endured for millions of years. But the most shocking defection came from the Stonekin, the ancient rock-based species that had been among the Council's founding members. Elder Granite Who Remembers appeared in a formal broadcast that was transmitted throughout known space, announcing his people's decision to withdraw from the Council and join the Free Species Federation. For 10 million years, the Stonekin have watched the galaxy turn while the Council remained still, the ancient being said, his voice carrying the weight of geological ages. We have seen enough of stagnation. It is time to learn from these young humans who have shown us that age means nothing without the willingness to grow. Chancellor Zektar stood alone in the Council chamber as half the member species formally announced their departure for the FSF. His forearms trembled with rage, and something that might have been fear as he watched the empire that had ruled the galaxy for 2 million years crumble in a matter of weeks. The remaining Council members gathered for an emergency session that felt more like a funeral than a meeting of galactic leaders. Empress Velnara's crystalline body had lost its usual brilliant glow, dulled by the realization that their ancient authority was collapsing around them. "How did this happen?" asked Council member Thisara, her scales cycling through colors that indicated deep confusion and distress. How did a species we dismissed as primitive create something that surpassed everything we built? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Rachel Stone's scientific reports had been analyzed by Council researchers who finally understood what they had missed 50 years ago. Humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or their adaptability. It had been their ability to see potential in others and inspire them to reach beyond their current limitations. Where the Council had created a hierarchy with themselves at the top, humanity had created a network of partnerships. Where the Council had maintained order through control, humanity had achieved progress through cooperation. Where the Council had feared the unknown, humanity had embraced it as an opportunity for growth. The final scene played out at Harmony Station, where Jake Morrison stood before a gathering that included representatives from over 100 species. Human children played alongside young aliens in observation areas designed to accommodate multiple atmospheric and gravitational requirements. Scientists and engineers from dozens of worlds collaborated on projects that would have been impossible for any single species to accomplish. The council offered us membership in their exclusive club, Jake said to the assembled delegates. But we discovered something better. We learned that the galaxy becomes infinitely larger when you stop trying to control it and start trying to understand it. Captain Diana Ross appeared on the main display, reporting from her current position near the galactic core where her exploration fleet had discovered structures that predated even the Council's ancient civilization. We're transmitting coordinates for 17 systems that contain artifacts of unknown origin, she reported. These discoveries are being shared freely with all FSF members for joint investigation. The presentation continued with reports from other exploration teams that had found everything from crystalline beings that existed partially in hyperspace to living planets that had achieved self-awareness. Each discovery was shared immediately with all FSF members, creating a constantly expanding database of knowledge that grew faster than any single species could assimilate. Jake concluded his presentation by looking directly into the camera, knowing that his words would be heard throughout both FSF and Council space. 50 years ago, the Council told humanity that we needed to grow up before we could join galactic civilization. They were right about one thing. We did need to grow. But we didn't grow by copying what already existed. We grew by imagining what could exist if everyone worked together toward something better. The final image showed Earth as seen from space, but it was not the same planet that had sent Jake Morrison to plead for Council membership decades ago. This Earth was surrounded by orbital habitats where multiple species lived and worked together. Ships from dozens of worlds came and went, carrying trade goods and cultural exchanges that enriched everyone involved. But most impressive was what could be seen in the background of the image. The artificial star that Luna Station had created blazed like a second sun,